Good afternoon everyone, and welcome to this meeting of East Staffordshire Borough Council Planning Committee of the 12th of May 2026. I'd like to welcome members of the public attending today, fellow committee members and our planning officers and support staff. Just before we begin the official part of the meeting, just some important housekeeping rules. The meeting itself will be broadcast live via YouTube and will be archived for future viewings. Could I ask all councillors and officers to please ensure you press your microphones on when speaking and off when finished. If we could ask every member of the public and officers and committee members to switch off your mobile phones or turn them on to silent. We're not expecting any fire tests today, so if you do hear the fire alarm, it will be the real call, so back out the way you came in, onto the main car park. Polite notice for members of the public not to call out when individuals are speaking, as it will prevent others from hearing the debate. And before we move to the main agenda, I'd just like to ask officers and members of the committee from my right to please press your microphones and introduce yourself. I'll start with myself, Councillor Arshad Afsar, Chairman for today's meeting.
Good afternoon, Naomi Perry, Planning Manager.
Hello, Mitchell Kitts, Development Management Manager.
Mark Evans, Staffordshire County Council Highways.
Claire Simpson, Staffordshire County Council Highways.
Councillor Monica Holton.
Good afternoon, Councillor Michael Slater.
Hello, Councillor Sheila McKiernan.
Good afternoon, Councillor Alison Legg.
Councillor Bev George.
Councillor Colin Whittaker, the Blythe Ward.
Councillor Jackie Jones.
Councillor Chris Smedley.
Councillor Liz Bullock.
Emily Thomas, Democratic Services Officer.
Akil Adnan, Planning Solicitor.
Thank you. We'll now move into the main agenda. So, agenda item number 1. Do we have any apologies for absence?
One apology, Chair, from Councillor Huckabee.
Thank you, if that can be noted. Agenda item number... Sorry, did you want to say? No. Agenda item number 2. Any declarations of interest? I've got a number of members wanting to make us aware of any interest, and just before we do so, I'd just like to make an announcement myself. Members of this committee will be aware that correspondence has been received both by post and by email relating to Home Farm in Dunstall. I wish to make it clear on behalf of all members that whilst this correspondence has been received and noted, it has not in any way influenced the views or predispositions of any members of this committee. We come to this committee meeting today with open minds, ready to consider all matters before us fairly, impartially and solely on the basis of the evidence and representations made in the proper course of this meeting. So can I just see a show of hands and it be noted for members who have received correspondence via post and email, please? Thank you, that's noted. Councillor Holton, did you first wish to declare an interest?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wish to declare an interest. I currently sit on the Horninglow and Eaton Parish Council, and this will be in respect of application 00452 and 00492. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Slater.
Thank you, Chair. Like Councillor Holden, I also sit on Horninglow and Eaton Parish Council, and I'm aware that the council has had discussions about, the parish council has discussions about the aforementioned planning application, but I have not taken an opinion either way, and I come to this meeting with an open mind and without bias. Thank you.
Thank you. Was it Councillor Legg? Did you wish to make an interest?
Yes, please. Just to tell you that I was contacted by person unknown asking if the people on the planning committee were still in the planning committee. And she just read a list out to me. I come with an open mind with no predetermination. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor George.
Yeah, on the home farm application, just to say I'm friends with the applicants, I won't be taking part in that. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm not going to declare an interest, but I do wish to say that as ward councillor for the home farm application, I've been approached by many people because this has been ongoing since 2021. Obviously, that's quite a long period of time, and many people have approached me, those both in favour and those against it. And although I listened to their views, I have tried my best to come to this committee with an open mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further declarations of interest? No, we don't see any further declarations of interest. Moving on to agenda item number 3. Would members please accept the minutes from the last meeting held on 24th of March 2026? Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Whittaker. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? No. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 4. Do we have any urgent business to be brought to the committee's attention? Thank you. We have no urgent business. Moving on to agenda item number 5. Applications for planning permission to be considered today. So the first application to be considered today is P2021-01502 for the demolition of existing portal framed agricultural buildings and slurry tank and redevelopment of the site, which includes the erection of a detached building to form new farm shop, restaurant, car parking and access, drainage, landscaping and public art and multifunctional open space. Conversion of existing listed barns to create mixed retail and cafe stroke restaurant class E. Educational rooms and toilets, change of use of existing dwelling to create staff accommodation and change of use of walled garden to provide outdoor play and leisure use. Updated transport technical note and flood risk assessment. And planning application P2021-01504 listed building consent for the demolition of existing portal framed agricultural buildings and slurry tank to facilitate the redevelopment of the site, comprising the conversion of the listed barns to create mixed retail caf stroke restaurant class E, educational rooms and toilets with associated works, which include creation of the new opening within the walled garden and internal and minor external works. Site address is Home Farm, Dunstall Road, Dunstall, DE13 8BE. I'll now pass over to the planning officer to present the case.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so we're here to discuss the two applications. I won't read out the titles again, the Chair's just done that, but application 1 is the full application and application 2 is the listed building consent application. Here we've got a plan of the site in black with the listed buildings in green. And we can also see the public footpaths in the wider area. Sorry, I've got a series of photos. I think they're quite slow to load. Here we've got the site entrance at Home Farm itself. The nearby church that we've seen on site visits, and looking north from the site. And then this is looking south towards the site entrance here. These are the more modern farm buildings that are proposed to be demolished. And these ones here, this is in the site itself, the modern portal buildings. And again, this is in the main part of the site, and we can just see in the background on that top photo the listed wall where the proposed opening is due to take place. And just some photos of inside of the building. This is the one next to the listed building. And then the listed building itself. Inside the listed building. And some photos of the upper floors as well. Here we've got towards the walled garden itself, further into the site, and this building here is proposed to be demolished. Here's looking south towards Dunstall Road through the arch, where we've stood on site visits with the listed courtyard, and this is the building here that's proposed to be in educational use. And here you can see the walled garden and the difference in site levels. And then this is looking back towards the site entrance through the site. Here we've got to the north of the site. This is the field beyond the farm buildings itself, beyond the walled garden. Looking into the listed building, the courtyard. And then this is going around the walled garden itself. To the north of the site. The fields beyond. And then these photos are within the walled garden itself. And again, you can see the difference in site levels. Here we've got some photos from Dunstall Road, the frontage of the site, and the listed buildings. Okay, so this is what the application, the full application is proposing. So demolition of the modern buildings on site with the erection of a new building for cafe stroke restaurant and farm shop. Got a series of parking and then conversion of these listed buildings to the south, landscaped area, suds feature, and then landscaping in this area to create a walk-through, a kind of tiered walk-through to the listed building. And then this is where the opening to the listed wall would take place. And this is just a plan just to show the buildings in orange proposed to be demolished. And here's just a more detailed plan showing the actual parking arrangement, a general landscaping, and just to make it clear that the play equipment is no longer proposed within the walled garden. It will just be I suppose a blank area for people to go in and sit and enjoy. Got some elevations of the new build cafe and farm shop. That's looking into the site itself. And again, walking around the new building, you can see the listed building there in the background. And here we've got a side section, so you can see the difference in topography across the site with landscaping to the north. Here we've got I've just circled locations of accessible parking in this location here, cycle parking here and here, and then charging points as well. And the application also proposes woodland planting to the north of the site. Okay, so this application was deferred by this planning committee last year on the basis of highway works, and the applicant has proposed 3 passing places in the vicinity of the site. So I'll go through each of those. We've got this one here, further west of the site's here. And we've got a photo there of the exact location. We've got one further along Dunstall Road, again further west from the site, and we saw these this morning. And the last one just south of the site. Okay, so turning to the committee report itself before committee. As I said, this item was deferred from planning committee last year, and a reconsultation took place on the basis of the updated highway information submitted by the application. So I'll focus on the comments received during that reconsultation. So Staffordshire County Council Highways maintain their objection on highway safety grounds, considering that the application has a lack of choice for sustainable transport, and the additional information, in particular the passing places, does not overcome the original objections, and recommends refusal. And since last year as well, we've also had objection on the grounds of ecology. So the applicant submitted a further information in relation to ecology, and we reconsulted the ecologists on that, and there remains concerns in terms of the information that's been submitted with the application, in particular unresolved nesting and bird and invasive species issues that require clarification, but back to the particular one that the ecologist is saying further surveys are needed, and we don't have enough information to come to a conclusion whether the proposal is acceptable or not. If I turn now to Appendix 1 of the committee report, which is the original committee report from last year, this is where no further comments have been received, so I'm just reporting on those comments originally received. The LLFA originally objected, however, following a revised drainage strategy and further technical information, the objection was removed, so they got no objection subject to conditions. County Council Archaeology, no objection subject to conditions. The EA, no objection, but they have offered advice in terms of groundwater protection and waste management. Severn Trent Water, no objection. The Police Liaison Officer, no objection, but does offer advice in terms of crime prevention across the site. And Historic England, no comment. National Forest Company, in principle, they support new visitor attractions which encourage people to visit and explore the National Forest. However, they cannot comment on the suitability of this site. And they've not objected, but they have asked for further details in terms of access to neighbouring woodlands and replacement trees. And they've specifically asked for a replacement ratio of any trees lost on site and 0.32 hectares of woodland planting. The British Hall Society have raised concerns and they've requested a condition in relation to a traffic management plan, signage and a full road safety assessment. And the Footpath Society and Public Right-of-Way, no objection subject to conditions and making the applicant aware of the public rights-of-way within the vicinity of the site. Internal consultations, environmental health, no objections subject to conditions on land contamination, and food safety in terms of the cafe and restaurant uses. Tree officer, no objection, but does request conditions for tree protection plans and method statement along with a tree replacement strategy. And conservation officer, no objections subject to conditions, and we'll come to those, to the listed building consent application shortly. Okay, so other comments that were received initially. So Dunstall Parish Council, they've no comment on the recent reconsultation, but they originally raised concern. Again, similar to Rangemore and Tatenhill, no comment on the recent reconsultation, but they originally objected due to highway impact. Barton and Needwood did comment on the reconsultation and feel that the 3 passing places proposed by the applicant would not create conditions to ease traffic flows or minimise the impact on the environment, and they reiterate their previous objection and also consider that the proposed travel plan is underwhelming and overall the impacts of the proposal cannot be mitigated. During the reconsultation, a total of 12 comments have been received. 3 of those have been in the last few days, so they were reported to committee via the update sheet. So 2 comments have been received in support of the development where it would be welcomed, with the remaining being objections. And these are set out in the report and update sheet, but I'll summarise these. Are that the development is not required and the scale is disproportionate to that required to repair the listed buildings. The passing places are not in locations which are problematic, nor will they address highway safety in the wider area. Will ruin the green character of Dunstall, will increase flooding, and highlighting that the ecology surveys are out of date and there's been no BNG assessment with the application. We've had comments on the impact of the character of the area not in keeping, landscape impacts due to the high volume of car parking, and that Dunstall will no longer be a peaceful part of the countryside. We've had comments in relation to the location and its sustainability, and that the proposal does not relate to an existing settlement, and there's little by way of community facilities, and there's already education facilities in the area. In terms of heritage assets, there's comments been received in relation to the list of buildings, and that the restoration is welcomed. However, that is offset by the high volume of car parking. Highways, concerns about risk of accidents, the traffic survey not being adequate, and others are listed there. Concerns over coach parking as well. Previous comments set out concerns in relation to ecology, and the loss of habitat and impact on ecology from the site. And as I mentioned, there was support for the proposal previously, in that residents welcomed jobs and tidying up of the site. And there were other comments that I've just listed there, but they're not material to this case before you today. Okay, so coming to a conclusion then, the principle, while some elements of the proposal do meet local plan policies, all of those policies are caveated with ensuring developments are suitably located, and it's not considered that the proposal is in a sustainable location for its use and scale, and it's not considered to be supported in principle by the local plan or the NPPF. Turning to design and impact on the character of the area, overall this is considered acceptable, and conditions could be imposed to secure a range of items, particularly materials and landscaping. In terms of amenity, whilst there will be an increase in comings and goings in the area, it's not considered that these would be significant impacts in their own right to warrant a refusal, and conditions could be imposed to limit the hours of operation, for example, the use of each unit, construction impacts, and lighting, for example. Highway matters, the development raises significant adverse highway safety issues due to the increase in vehicle users on substandard roads, and that's forms part of the two recommended reasons for refusal. In terms of the historic environment, the scheme is considered to comply with the NPPF and the local plan overall. However, harm is identified, and taking the listed building consent application by itself, that harm can't be outweighed on an application by itself. So that's why the recommendation is for application 2 to also be refused. Subject to conditions, as set out in the LLFA response, it's not considered the scheme would have an adverse impact in terms of flood risk to users of the site or nearby residents. And turn to biodiversity, the application is exempt from BNG. The application was submitted before that became mandatory in 2024. However, the application fails to demonstrate it would not result in unacceptable harm to protected species and their habitats, and that's one of the recommended reasons for refusal. So in conclusion, the proposal does not comply with the local plan policies relating to scale and location, and as such it will result in an increase in vehicles on substandard roads to the detriment of highway safety, contrary to the local plan and the NPPF. The proposal also fails to provide a genuine choice of transport modes for the majority of users, and most of the users, will likely travel by private motor car, conflicting with the local plan and the aims of the NPPF. And then turning to the final reason, we cannot be satisfied at this stage that the proposal complies with local plan and the NPPF in relation to protected species and ecology. So therefore, the recommendation for application 1 is for the 3 reasons as set out in the report, and for application 2 for the 1 reason set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. I have 3 speakers on this item, so if I can ask for Altine Elias to come forward, please. You'll have 3 minutes when you press the mic for
Chair, members of the Planning Committee, thank you for the opportunity to address you this afternoon. My name's Altine Elias and I'm a Chartered Surveyor with over 38 years of experience in town planning work. I represent Mr and Mrs Liddington, who have lived in the hamlet of Dunstall for over 43 years, and I'm speaking to you today to urge you to support your officer's continued recommendation to refuse these applications. The most recent census confirmed that the population of Dunstall was 209 people. The hamlet is located 100 metres to the west of the application site, and the proposal, if approved, will change the character of this quiet rural location forever. The only change since you last considered these applications is the introduction of the 3 proposed passing places close to the application site. Your Highways Authority has consistently objected to this proposal, and the latest response received confirms the following. The main access to the site is from a narrow carriageway with a lack of forward visibility, no lighting, and no pedestrian or cycling provision. The development site is located in a rural setting at a considerable distance from any passenger transport or quality walking or cycling facilities. The proposal will increase vehicle movements, and additional vehicles on substandard roads will increase the potential for conflict between motorists and cyclists. There's no viable way of accessing the site safely on foot. The passenger transport team have confirmed that the commercial bus services cannot and will not negotiate the area due to the substandard and inadequate roads. It follows that the proposed coaches, which the applicant states will visit the site, likewise cannot safely access it. Given the remote location, Highways also confirm it's unrealistic and unlikely that any travel planning for alternative means of accessing the site will be viable. The Highways officer confirms that the introduction of the 3 passing spaces will not overcome the previous safety concerns which were raised in 2025, nor will they address any highway conflicts which will arise if the development is permitted. The Highways Authority concludes that all journeys to the site will therefore have to be car-borne, as it's not physically possible to access the site by any other means. This is a matter of fact and is a material consideration in your assessment of these proposals. Members will be fully aware they have a statutory duty to determine applications in accordance with the development plan, unless material planning considerations indicate otherwise. Paragraph 110 of the MPPF confirms applications should give priority to pedestrian and cycle movements and facilitate access to public transport. Paragraph 115 states that councils should ensure safe and suitable access can be provided for all users, not just those in private cars. The Highways Authority has confirmed neither of these paragraphs are satisfied by these proposals, and it's not physically possible for the applicant to do so. Given the location of the application site and the scale of development proposed, it is therefore clear that the adverse impacts of granting consent will significantly and demonstrably outweigh any benefits. Together with your officers, we cannot see how these fundamental issues can be overcome by the applicant, and they've certainly failed to demonstrate this in their submissions. As evidenced by the sustained objections from the Highways Authority over the course of the last 6 years.
Thank you. If I can ask you to stop there.
No problem. Thank you very much.
If you just turn the mic off, please.
Will do.
Thank you. If I can have the second speaker, Peter Gaffney, to come up, please. Again, 3 minutes from when you press the mic. Can you just use your mic, please? Just press that on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm Peter Gaffney. I'm a Dunstall resident for the last 14 years. I'm also a member of the Dunstall St Mary's Parochial Church Council. I'd like to make 3 points regarding this application. At the moment, Dunstall, besides its agricultural use, is an area of recreation for walkers, horse riders and cyclists. These facilities are not occasional, they are used daily throughout the year. The proposed development would have a detrimental effect on these activities. Dunstall has 4 designated footpaths and 3 bridleways. Access between these paths requires walking on the tarmac lanes, which have no verges. Walkers take advantage of the benches and the crossroads, the benches at the crossroads and in the church grounds to enjoy the peaceful surroundings. Dunstall, for many, is a much needed area of calm and involvement in the natural world. Maybe it should be available on the NHS. Second point, proposal for the farm shop stroke retail stroke events location. There already exists 3 similar outlets within close vicinity. Firstly, Barton Marina, which has butchers, farm shop and cafes. Then at Yoxall is Paul Shum, which is a butcher's, delicatessen, bakery, fruit and veg. And at Horcross, the Deer Park, which has a butcher's and farm shop and cafe. Regarding environmental education, the award-winning Roslyston Forestry Centre offers extensive facilities. All these sites have good road access, something which is not going to be available in Dunstall. Finally, highways. 6 years after the pre-planning consultations, when Highways made known their opposition to the proposal, last year's committee meeting deferred a decision to give the proposer time to offer solutions to Highways' objections. As you will have seen, Highways' latest report still recommends refusal. At the site meeting, members were not asked to explore the access roads that are the cause of Highways' decision. Highways are the experts in assessing safety and suitability for developments. Their advice is still to refuse permission. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. If I can ask for the final speaker, William Brearley, to come forward, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon. As you've heard, members deferred the application in June of last year. The sole reason for the deferral was to allow time for the applicant to consider and provide passing places at the various locations on the road network, with members otherwise happy with the applications. We immediately met with our highway consultant last June after committee to review where passing places should be, and we then met with officers to agree locations on the 9th of July, and that meeting was officers and officers of the Highway Authority. Regrettably, no agreement was reached on the locations of the passing places due to the wider in-principle objection from the Highway Authority. Members will recall coming to a different view on this following their visit last year, where we travelled along the local roads. Following that meeting, we decided to proceed with the locations you see today. Topo surveys were instructed and our consultants prepared the technical drawings. These were submitted to officers in September of last year. Each passing place has good forward visibility and each are provided in narrower sections of the local highway network. Whilst frustrating for us and for residents waiting nearly 8 months from when the passing places were submitted, the applicant and his team provided what members explicitly requested last year at committee. Turning to the new objections relating to bats, officers have previously approved applications with bat surveys being a condition. They also had no issue last year bringing the applications to committee without an objection on protected species. Since then, further assessments have been carried out, which have confirmed there has been no material change to the already known presence of bats within the listed barns. Mitigation already exists within the scheme. Should the application be approved, a Natural England bat licence will still be required and further nocturnal surveys will be undertaken at that juncture. The Council, therefore, in our opinion, has a wealth of technical information to make an informed decision today in respect of protected species. As to wider matters, members will hopefully recall that at last year's committee, you were pleased with the design of the proposed development and how the various listed buildings would be brought back to life. You recognise the economic benefits of the development and how it was a creative farm diversification enterprise that would support the wider estate. No other matters raised concern for members, including on drainage, trees and neighbouring amenity. To summarise, the application was deferred almost 12 months ago now for the sole reason to secure passing places on the road network. These are now provided and have been shown to have acceptable forward visibility. We therefore respectfully ask that members support the proposals and resolve to approve the 2 applications today. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got no further speakers on this item, so now I'll open up for debate for committee members. Do I have anybody indicating they wish to speak? Councillor McKinnon.
Thank you, Chair. Is it possible to ask highways, what's the difference between this application and the highways situation at the Deer Park, which is also on a narrow road, and one seems to have been passed and one seems to be deemed unsuitable? I'd just like to understand a little bit more.
We can't comment on the Deer Park because we don't know that, I'm afraid, so without seeing, because each development would be on its merits. The issue that we've got here is there is some lack of information, so it suggests there's going to be an educational facility on the site, so you would presume that there may need to be coaches bringing children and alike in. There's been no information given to the Highway Authority with regard to how that would happen. Also, in terms of the passing places that you've seen, they are all relatively clustered together, so they're not looking at the wider area where there are wider issues. You're quite some distance from what would be the standard highways where people can pass easily. There's no lighting. There's some very dangerous bends with no forward visibility where you're not going to be able to see oncoming traffic, and by virtue of this being a commercial enterprise, they're going to want to encourage a lot of people. So seasonally, Christmas, Easter, half terms, things like that, you're going to want to encourage people to come to the site, so it will be commercially viable. Therefore, there will be encouraging traffic to come here, and there's no again, no genuine alternative other than for people to come by car because of the distance it is from any other neighbourhood. So that's why we're concerned. But in terms of the other facility you mentioned, I'm afraid we don't know that, so we couldn't compare. Thank you.
Thank you. The agent who just spoke said he did have discussions with the planning. Can I just clarify, were those discussions held with highways?
Yeah, with us as the LPA and highways. That's correct.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you. I just wonder if the Staffordshire County Council highways officers are able to comment on any of the other areas around there, because you know this is an area where we have Berkeley Garden Centre, we have Paulsham's, we have which you know they have both of that. Well, certainly the Garden Centre has a cafe and a shop. Paulsham's is quite busy on a very difficult junction. You don't know the Deer Park, but there's quite a few other places around there. And if this road is substandard, I just wonder what on earth we're going to be able to develop anywhere, because I don't think there are too many of our roads around the whole of our area that anyone would consider to be anything other than substandard at the moment. Perhaps you could comment on that, really.
No, I'm sorry, we haven't. We deal with each development on its merits. We wouldn't be making a comparison, so we will have looked at this one on its particular merits.
Okay, then can I just phrase it slightly differently? Can you tell me if the roads around other areas in this particular, in my particular ward, are considered anything other than substandard, these rural roads?
In terms of if there was going to be an increase in traffic, then no. So if it's going to be a significant amount of traffic, which should, and there's no other alternative other than coming in the motor car, then that would be an issue for us, yes.
So that looks like we're not going to get any other development in my area, which I suppose for some people is probably quite good news, but it does stifle any growth or anything, because you know if we're going to be just looking at the standard of our roads, then it's there's nothing too good to say about them, I'm afraid. And when you say about sustainable transport plans, what would you expect there to be available for something like a farm shop there? What transport would you expect to be in this sort of rural area that would serve that, because none of the other places that we mentioned have got any public transport. They haven't got any, there's certainly no buses. I don't think there's any public transport around any there. So I'm just interested to know what you would expect them to be there that would make it acceptable, just so we're aware.
It's the fact that there is no alternative at all. So again, looking at this on its own merits, the connections for the public rights of way, for there being any potential for any coach trips or bus trips or commercial bus services, there is no options, and it would be either seasoned cyclists or seasoned walkers who would be able to get here. There is part of the technical note that suggests that these are quiet lanes that both walkers and cyclists could use, but in encouraging that extra traffic to come to this site, again, to be commercially viable, that would change the nature of those roads. They would become busier and more dangerous. So that's the view that we've taken.
Councillor Whittaker.
Yeah, we've heard about the sustainability not being able to reach the site, and yet we were told there's cyclists, there's horse riders, there's walkers on a regular basis going through our site. You've got to look at this site. It is, as I said before, it's a destination, and that's what it is. I don't know about the coaches or anything, there's no information on that. We sat there at the last meeting, there were 6 of us at that meeting, and I got assurances from the solicitor, our solicitor, at the end of that meeting, the only thing on the table today for this delayed meeting referral was the highways. So there shouldn't have been anything else, in my view, back on the table. On that day, it was 6 in favour and 1 against the proposal. Everybody agreed what it was going to bring to the area, and they voted because of what they saw on that day. You're not saying when you change the committee or anything, things change. The applicant has gone away. He's designed what we asked for on the day, which is some passing places to alleviate that traffic. We could have passed it on the day, but we didn't, because we thought we'd help the residents see their side of it and put in for some passing places to alleviate some of the problems. But on the day, we could see there was a lot of advantages with this scheme. Diversity of farm is a big thing. We'll come across that. Bringing back listed buildings. You've only got to look across the way to see the old hall there, which is depleted and in ruin because it's been left alone for a few years. And these things happen. And the beauty of those buildings, if they can be done sympathetically, which we know they will, the wall garden, everything else, I think that the other discussions on the table shouldn't be on the table. I just think it's purely a highways thing. And I don't know what else the applicant could do other than he's done to alleviate that. Councillor Slater over there, I remember him saying in the last meeting, said we drove there then, he couldn't see a problem with the roads at all going to our site, and I don't think we've seen an issue with them this morning. And you know, that site could be, there could be 10, 12 houses on that site quite legitimately with 3 or 4 cars each, so you've got 40 cars there. If it's a farm, you've got lorries bringing fertiliser in, you've got Arctics taking corn away. There's always going to be issues with something like that. But I think in this case, I think he's bent over backwards to try and alleviate these problems which we envisaged early on. And I think he should have some encouragement at this stage, because I just think this is a wonderful site. And give up people the opportunity to visit. Dunstall is a beautiful area. I mean, everybody says it's one of the most beautiful areas around here. It doesn't mean to say this is going to spoil the area, and it wouldn't be in the interest of the applicant or anybody to spoil the area, because that's the appeal of it. So I think the only thing on the table is the highways, the issue with the passing places, and I can't see why anything else is on the table at this.
Thank you. Do I have any other speakers wishing to come in at this point? Thank you. I don't see any other speakers on this item. Do I see any other alternative motion apart from what's been discussed?
ask, what is the motion at the moment then?
It's the recommendation to refuse both applications.
On the three reasons listed here.
That's right, yeah.
Those are the three
Yeah.
reasons, yeah.
So, moving on from that, my proposal would be to approve the application with conditions as we see fit.
Yeah, that's right. So what we'll have to do is move to the officer's recommendation first. If that fails, then we'll move to the next motion. So moving to the officer's recommendation to refuse both applications. But we'll do one at a time. So we'll do the first application, which is the demolition of the existing portal frame agricultural planning application P2021-01502. So do I have a seconder moving that forward for the officer's recommendation?
That's for the demolition of the ARC buildings that are there, the agricultural building, and nothing of...
No, but it's the full application. It's the full application, yeah.
Yeah, so you're seconding that. No, this is to refuse. This is the officer's recommendation. So do I have a seconder for refusal? That will be on the officer's recommendation. Councillor Legg. So I've got a seconder for the refusal of the officer's recommendation. So moving it forward to a named vote, because we're now into a named vote situation. So we'll get the solicitor to read out the names, and if you could just give a for, against or abstention. And this is clearly for the refusal.
Yep. Councillor Afsar?
Against. Against.
Councillor Bullock? Yeah, refusal.
Can you just press your mic so we can just so we get that?
Against.
Councillor Holton?
For.
Councillor Jones?
Against.
Councillor Legg?
For.
That's what I should be against.
Councillor McKiernan?
Against.
Councillor Slater?
Against.
Councillor Smedley?
Against.
And Councillor Whittaker?
Against.
So that motion's not being carried. Yeah, defeated, yeah.
Thank you. So based on that, the motion has been defeated. That's on the first application. So we'll move now to Councillor Whittaker. Do you want to just propose what your motion will be?
To propose that the development goes ahead with any conditions we see fit to imply at this point, with the changes to the highways as have been carried out.
I think they just wanted one for the first bit. That was all.
Sorry. Sorry. Councillor Whittaker, can I just ask you to just repeat that motion, please, just so that it's clear? Just because I just need to make potentially an amendment to that, that's all, with your permission.
Well, the motion is to approve the application.
Can we add to that motion that it's subject to delegated authority to the planning manager to agree a set of conditions in consultation with the chair of planning? That'll just ensure that it's more robust. Yep. Is that agreed?
Yeah,
yep.
acceptable.
That's
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that, please? The seconder for the motion, Councillor McKinnon. Right, okay. So now we'll move to a named vote on this.
Chair, before you do that, I mean, you just asked for that the chair and planning manager could agree conditions. What sort of things are we talking about there? What's the...
Yeah, I mean, they'd cover all the topics, I suppose, that I went through in the headings earlier. So flooding, materials, landscaping, tree planting, ecology conditions, any highways, you know, bar the objection from highways. But it'll be a full suite, and I imagine there would be substantial in number.
So in fact, that was what was on the first committee report, basically. That was 9 months ago, or whenever it was.
No, this committee have never seen a suite of conditions.
The,
for the listed building one, it would. Yes. But yeah, for the full, no, they wouldn't be the same.
Cover those.
No, it wouldn't. No.
Sorry, Councillor Whittaker, if I can just ask the question in terms of what is the reason for approval, bearing in mind the officer recommendation and the report? Can I just get a reason that we can have for the record?
Because on balance, I feel that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages because of the heritage of the building, the site, and because of the decision made at the last planning meeting.
In terms of kind of the main points that I've taken away from that is in terms of the advantages and disadvantages of the scheme, in terms of the heritage in particular of the building, so kind of bringing back the use of the building, otherwise it would end up in a state of disrepair. And your point regarding the decision of the last planning meeting is the fact that it was deferred based on just the highways point that you feel has now been addressed. Is that correct?
No, I just feel that the issue of the last time has been addressed by the applicant. That's what I meant.
Yeah, that's fine. So, sorry, let me just clarify the motion. So the motion that Councillor Whittaker's put forward is for the application to be approved on the grounds that the application now overcomes the previous issue that had been raised, the previous issue that had been addressed in the previous application from last year, and also to bring the building back into use. In terms of the planning conditions, the motion is that the planning manager has delegated authority in consultation with the chair of planning to agree a suite of conditions that are appropriate for the development.
Yeah, a lot of those issues are covered by that.
Yeah,
by that,
that's fine.
thank you.
Councillor McKinnon, is that, do you still approve that, second that motion?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
that's
I
fine.
do.
That's fine, we can go to the named vote, yeah. So going to the named vote, Councillor Afsar,
For.
Councillor Bullock,
For.
Councillor Holton,
Against.
Councillor Jones,
For.
Councillor Legg, Councillor Legg, sorry,
Against.
Councillor Slater,
For.
Councillor McKiernan,
For.
Councillor Smedley,
For.
Councillor Whittaker,
For.
Thank you. That motion's been carried. Now we'll move over to the next motion, which is planning application P202101-504. That's the listed building consent. Obviously, on this one, again, the officer's recommendation is refusal. Do I have a seconder for the officer's recommendation? I cannot see a seconder for this. Do I see an alternative motion for this? Councillor Whittaker.
Yeah, approve as was mentioned in the previous plan application, in favour of the application.
Thank you. Do I see a seconder for the motion being approved? Councillor McKiernan.
going to the named vote, Councillor Afsar,
For.
Councillor Bullock,
For.
Councillor Holton,
Against.
Councillor Jones, Councillor Legg,
Against.
Councillor McKiernan,
For.
Councillor Slater,
For.
Councillor Smedley,
For.
Councillor Whittaker,
For.
Thank you. That motion has also been carried. That brings this part of the meeting to an end. If any members from the public gallery wish to leave at this point, they may do so before we move on to the next item.
This one, you're going to have to go to four. You're going to have to. Yeah. Which one? Yeah, separately. Yeah.
Thank you, members. Moving on to agenda item 5.2. So before we hear the following applications, I just want to inform councillors and members of the public that items 5.2, 5.3, 5.4 and 5.5 will be presented together. So these are planning application numbers P2023-00491, P2023-00492, P2023-01063 and P2024-00452. I won't read out the item descriptions on this. The planning officer will obviously do it at each item number. I'll pass over to the planning officer to present.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. These applications relate to land and plots 1, 3, 4 and 6 in Horninglow Basin and seek the use of the land as gypsy traveller caravan sites comprising residential pitches together with ancillary development and landscaping. The sites are located within a defined settlement boundary of Burton upon Trent, which is identified as a main town in the local plan and is a sustainable location with good access to public transport, education, healthcare and other services. The proposals seek a betterment over the existing situation, reducing the number of caravans on site, and would allow the local planning authority to impose clear and enforceable planning conditions to control their use, layout, appearance and future management. In land use terms, the principle of residential use on the site is acceptable. The site is within a settlement area and the immediate surrounding area contains existing dwellings and land with planning permission for residential development. The proposals comply with policies SP1 and SP2 of the local plan, which direct development to sustainable settlements, and policy SP19, which supports gypsy and traveller sites that meet specific criteria in such locations. Members are reminded that the Council currently cannot demonstrate a full 5-year supply of gypsy traveller pitches. The Gypsy Traveller Accommodation Assessment 2023 identifies a significant shortfall with at least a further 11 pitches required by 2030. Realisation of the proposals would therefore make a meaningful contribution towards meeting this identified need, and it weighs significantly in favour of the application. If approved, the sites would provide significant soft landscaping. In addition, the proposals include the provision of a 5-metre wide landscape bund separating the sites from the nearby A38. The bund is considered a necessary and proportionate mitigation measure, reinforcing visual screening, improving noise sensitivity and long-term landscape resilience, and ensuring the development is well contained when viewed from Honinglow Road, the A38 and the Canal Corridor. Overall, officers consider the proposals would not result in harm to the character and appearance of the area, and they comply with policy SP24 of the local plan. The sites are of sufficient size to accommodate the proposed pitches without undue intensification. Separation distances, screening and limited scale of occupation ensure that proposals will not give rise to unacceptable harm to the amenity interests of neighbouring occupiers. Granting planning permission would allow the Council to better control the number of units, along with securing appropriate drainage, noise mitigation measures, lighting, landscaping and site management, all of which would contribute to the optimisation of the site. These matters would be controlled by virtue of the recommended conditions. Members will note that the Highway Authority have concerns over access to the site. The site is accessed via a long, private, unadopted road, and the Highway Authority advises that previously approved access improvement works must be secured and implemented. Notwithstanding, officers consider this matter can be satisfactorily addressed by condition, requiring submission and implementation of the access improvement scheme to an agreed timescale. The site lays adjacent to the Trent and Mersey Canal Conservation Area, and officers can confirm that the proposal would preserve its character and appearance. Concerns regarding crime, antisocial behaviour and site management are noted. However, as highlighted in the report, officers consider that these matters are either not material to the determination of this proposal or addressed through other legislation, or will be more effectively controlled through the granting of planning permission. In summation, significant weight is afforded to the sustainable location of the site, the identified and unmet need for gypsy traveller accommodation, the ability to regularise and control the land use more effectively, resulting in a planning betterment. The potential impacts relating to highway amenity and site management are capable of being adequately mitigated by condition. Accordingly, the applications are recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out in the officer report. Thank you. Just go through the sides one by one. Obviously, we're out on site earlier on. So in black, sorry, can we go back? Just one, thanks. So in black is site 1, so that's the largest site where 4 pitches are proposed, and I'll show you the layout in a moment. Then site 3 in red, site 4 in blue, and finally site 6. Sorry, plot 6, keep saying site, my mistake. Plot 1 in black, plot 3 in red, plot 4 in blue, and plot 6 in green. So here's shown as the indicative layout plus the proposed septic tank plus the proposed landscaping. Likewise for plot 3. Sorry, yeah. Yeah. Likewise for plot 4. And likewise for plot 6. Thank you, members.
Thank you. I have one speaker on this item, Linda Cunningham, from the Parish Council representative, Horninglow and Eaton Ward.
Thank you. This is a statement from Horninglow and Eaton Parish Council and the raising concerns of residents who felt that they couldn't object because there was no way to do that anonymously. Much of the planning applications work off the assumption that because houses have been built on the site, that this is in some way approves the site for mobile housing venture. However, there has also been conditions precedent set in nearby applications, for example, HO 17418/01, where conditions were that it would blend in with the existing development and that the bricks and tiles should be used in construction. The proposal for approval of mobile homes on the site, we believe, is a considerable change of character to the site and not in line with the conservation and enhancement of land as outlined in the National Policy Framework. The proposed development does not provide lasting or sustained housing provision, and it is the Council's belief that many considerations, for example, water, electricity supply, rubbish collection, are lacking as considerations in the planning application. We believe that the proposed site is not fit for a sustained traveller and gypsy site. This is largely due to how the site has been allowed to come about in an ad hoc nature, as opposed to have been designed to fit the needs of that community, a community I'm from. The application is for respective planning, and as such has failed to propose an offer that is both fitting and appropriate to the needs of the traveller and gypsy community, as it has not been designed as such. In the planning policy for traveller sites, there are clear markers, services, etc. outlined as to what is considered best practice for designing traveller and gypsy sites, many of which we believe this application has not answered or proposed. Previous refusal decisions for this and surrounding sites have highlighted as a concern the visibility and access to the area and the considerable impact to highways. The main concern we share is the visibility to the entrance to the site, and particularly from a southeasterly direction, where the hump bridge means there is no visibility or little to no visibility to oncoming cars. Where visibility begins, the top of the hump bridge does not provide ample braking distance for cars, vans or mobile homes being pulled by vehicles in and out of the site. The road is the main route into and out of Burton, and we consider the additional traffic proposed by vehicles entering and exiting the site is a considerable risk to life and not fit for purpose. It is also of note that in 2023 there was a motorbike accident right at that entrance. As such, in the strongest terms, we do not believe that the road can support additional housing in this location. The proposed site makes inadequate provision for the disposal of waste. This is a serious matter, as on many occasions
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're up on time. Thank you. I have no further speakers on this item, so I'll open up the floor for debate by committee members. Does Councillor Slater?
Yes. Thank you. First of all, can I speak to Staffordshire Highways and ask them, because I know you put a condition in about a turning space further down the road, but does well, actually two questions. A, why haven't you got a condition about a turning space at the end of the application, if that's the case? And B, does the change of use affect the conditions you've previously put on the access to the site on Horninglow Road? Does it make a difference now you've got a set number of people living in this or potentially living in this site, or does it make it better? Thank you. Does that make sense?
Sorry, Councillor, I was just getting clarification from the planning manager on your question. Come back to me if I don't answer this question, but I think I understand what you were asking. The site itself, the access itself, is a private road. So Staffordshire County Council's responsibility ends at the back of the current footway on Horninglow Road. So the rest of it, rear of that, is private and is not our responsibility. The applications before you, obviously, are for mobile homes instead of what was previously suggested down there of permanent residential homes. So previously, we would have looked at the access that is there now, and I mean the vehicular access that is there now, coming off the site onto Horninglow Road. I made a site visit half an hour before planning committee today to remind myself of what it looked like. I don't have a large car. I have a Volkswagen Polo, so it's an old type of design. It's not a 4x4 or an SUV. And that easily got in and out of the site on land that we control as a highway authority. And I have no thought that two cars couldn't pass on the rear of that access. And obviously then it goes into private land. So from our perspective, and what your decision is today, is obviously the NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework, from our perspective, gives only two reasons to say no to a planning application: either a severe impact on the highway network or a highway safety impact on the highway network. The quantum of development wouldn't, in my mind, tick the severe box. 500 houses has lost its appeal on the word severe, so we'd never ever win that argument. Highway safety would be the only argument left in the NPPF toolkit. I acknowledge there was in December 23 a motorcycle accident somewhere around the brow of the bridge. And I can confirm from my last site visit before committee today, the visibility when trying to turn right is poor due to the crest of the bridge. But that is what it is. It has always been like that. There is nothing realistically that can be done to improve that visibility unless somebody wants to rebuild a bridge, which we'd never be able to do, and you'd never be able to get the canal to do it either, because obviously the height clearance is required. So in terms of the access itself, the decision is being made on whether it is deemed that the access is safe and suitable for the quantum of development that is going to be put down there. Now obviously you've got potentially mobile homes, statics, etc. You may not always have cars exiting that site. You know, it could be something being towed. So there is concern with regards to that visibility on that right-hand side, turning right. But there is very little you could do about it in terms of mitigation. Hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you. I see. I hear the answer. Thank you for interpreting my question for me. Right, we'll stick with this then. Forgive me, I'm not a highways engineer. I know nothing about it at all. Let's be honest. But so making the exit safer. Has anyone considered a situation where you can turn left into the site when you come over the bridge, but you can't turn right when you come down Horninglow Road, and likewise you could turn left when you go out, but not right. And I know it would restrict people's access into it, but that would certainly avoid the traffic having to turn out of the site across the carriageway, facing people coming down a bridge and turning right, wouldn't it? So that's a possibility. Has anyone considered that, and is that something that might make this situation a little bit safer, perhaps?
It hasn't been requested in the application. Obviously, as your planning officer has stated, there is a planning condition that the planning officer has put on the application form, on the planning officer's report that's before you today, to request highway upgrades as such, or access upgrades, I think was the terminology. So if you were minded for that, that could be potentially covered through that planning condition. Obviously, what you have to consider is there is no plans before us to this point to see if that is deliverable, in terms of normally to stop somebody from physically turning would require road signage. It may require physical barrier down the middle of the road to physically stop somebody trying to do it. And it would also require a traffic regulation order, which again has the ability to fail because it has to go out to a vote, basically. It's not something we can implement carte blanche. So it is something that could be looked at. It could potentially be covered by the planning condition that your officer is recommending in the decision. But there's a risk that it can't be delivered.
Sorry, yes, thank you, Chair. Sorry, and the second part of my question, which perhaps didn't explain very well, is a technical thing. You've required a turning point halfway down the site, and I just wondered why there's a turning halfway down the site but not at the very end. I don't think it makes any difference to the merit of the site itself. But just
from my perspective,
why is the purpose of that?
From my perspective, and as I've said before, and we're just going to make a observation rather than a technical comment. Our remit stops at the back of footway. That land is not ours. We have no remit to comment on it or judge what goes on behind that. From a layman's point of view, as your officer's report states, refuse collection is going to have to take place within the site. So at some point you're going to have to get something large down there to collect refuse, for example. And the facility that's shown on the drawings that you would have seen on your site visit today is the most probably suitable place to turn a refuse vehicle. It doesn't need to go all the way because it can't, and it wouldn't be able to turn. That's probably the most logical place a vehicle of a given size could turn around to collect refuse and go back out. That's probably my layman's opinion rather than somebody from a highways, because it's not of our remit to comment on something down there. But it's big enough to turn, and obviously we wouldn't want a refuse vehicle trying to reverse out onto Horninglow Road.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. We have an obligation to provide, is it 18 traveller sites pictures between now and before 2040, and this 12 here, added to the 2 we've already got, makes quite a huge contribution to that. And that satisfies the requirement up to 2030 at least. So So does that mean between now and 2030 we will not be granting any further applications?
Each case on its own merits, Councillor.
So huge parts.
But in answer to your question, yes, it makes a massive contribution, certainly. Each case on its own merits. I can't really say any more.
Absolutely right, each case on its own merit. But one of the requirements and one of the issues that you raise is that we need to provide some traveller sites between now and 2030. This will do that and deliver what we need. Is that right?
Indeed it would, yes.
Councillor Slater, did you want to come back?
Yes, can I follow up on that line of questioning? This morning we saw various plots with multiple, forgive me, units. I've forgotten dwellings on them, didn't we? So there are more. I should have counted on it. I didn't count them. So the proposal now is for fewer caravans and more. Sorry, hang on, fewer plots. Hang on, we'll get it right. Forgive me, ladies and gentlemen. I'm getting my mobile homes and caravans. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So a pitch would be the static, so
yes,
the big caravan.
Static. I do beg your pardon, everybody. Sorry.
So a pitch is a static and a mobile.
Right.
But it would, if the schemes are realised, if they're approved today, and if they're realised, and if they're realised in the way they should be realised, if they're built in accordance with the approved plans, assuming it is going to be approved, then that will lead to a significant reduction to what's on site at the moment, if that's the question.
Yes, that is the question. But what I'm getting at in relation to our obligations to provide sites for the gypsy population, if we're only going to have less mobile homes there, where are the other people going to go, and will that make an impact on our provision of gypsy accommodation throughout the borough? Because I should have counted them, but I know on one of them there's the proposals of four static sites, and there were 7 on that particular site. So how do we have to consider this as a matter now?
It's not relevant to this application, I respectfully suggest. I mean, we haven't done the count on that site, so we don't know who identifies as gypsy travellers and who doesn't. So.
Councillor Legg.
Thank you, Chair. This morning on the site visit, with this area being in the conservation area, was a bit disappointed to see all the rubbish that had been moved to the side of the canal in a conservation area. I'd like to condition that this is cleaned up before actually any sort of permission is given, please.
I think this actually falls out of our purview to control. If there's rubbish on site, then that's controlled by other means. I can certainly reach out to our other partners who would deal with removing that. I can certainly speak to, assuming there is an approval today, I can certainly speak to the site owners to see that that's accommodated. But I couldn't. It's not something we could control by virtue of a condition.
Yeah, there was 2 piles of old building junk.
I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Councillor George.
Yeah, the lady from the parish council mentioned that the parish council thought that there were certain markers related to traveller sites that hadn't been met or covered. Can you clarify that that's all been agreed and met?
Not as far as I'm concerned. I'll respectfully disagree with the parish council.
Thank you. Do I see any other member wishing to come in on the debate before we go to the recommendations? Councillor Slater.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry. So if we approve this application, we talked earlier about the conditions of road safety accessing the site and entering the site. Will that be something that the officers will consider?
It will certainly be explored. Yeah, we've asked for obviously a full set drawing, so yes, it will.
Yeah. To make it as safe
that can be done in consultation with yourselves as well.
All right. Okay.
In the interest of full transparency. So.
Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
We are dealing with all these 4 applications together, even though they're separate and individual applications. One of the issues we had a look at and was part of the recommendation was there was some landscaping done. Does that apply to the whole site, or does it just apply to each of the little blocks that are there? I mean, will the plan for the landscaping?
It does apply to the whole site. So there's a tree planting scheme throughout the entirety of the site, and there's tree planting and the bund. So you got the bund between the A38 and which has sort of been partly implemented, but obviously needs some work. But in answer to your question, there's significant soft landscaping on each plot, as well as some tree planting throughout the site.
So does that include the side of the canal that's there as well?
It
so
does, yes.
The whole lot rather than just the individual.
It will, yes.
And that actually covers Councillor Legg's problem with all the rubbish that's there. Presumably, when you do the landscaping, that will sort.
Yeah, something we'll have to give you.
That will sort out all those issues there.
Indeed.
Thank you. Do I see any other speaker wishing to come in on the debate? Thank you. As we have no other speakers on these items, we'll take each item, so each one of the four on its own. So moving to the officer's recommendation is to approve on all four. So moving on the first one, P2023-00491, that's plot 1. Do I have a seconder moving that forward with the officer's recommendation to approve? Councillor Jones. We'll go to the named vote now on this item.
Yep. Councillor Afsar?
4.
Councillor Bullock?
4.
Councillor George?
4.
Councillor Holton?
4.
Councillor Jones?
4.
Councillor Legg?
4.
Councillor McKiernan?
4.
Councillor Slater?
4.
Councillor Smedley?
4.
Councillor Whittaker?
4.
Thank you. That motion on the first application, plot 1, is carried. Moving to the second, which is plot 3, planning application P2023-00492. Do I have a seconder for this application? Councillor George. Sorry. Yeah. Now we'll move to the named vote.
Councillor Afsar?
4.
Councillor Bullock?
4.
Councillor George?
4.
Councillor Holton?
4.
Councillor Jones? 4. Councillor Legg?
4.
Councillor McKiernan?
4.
Councillor Slater?
4.
Councillor Smedley?
4.
Councillor Whittaker?
Thank you. That motion is also carried. Moving on to planning application P2023-01063. This is for plot 4. Do I have a seconder for this? Councillor Legg. We'll move to the name vote now.
Councillor Afsar?
4.
Councillor Bullock?
4.
Councillor George?
4.
Councillor Holton?
4.
Councillor Jones?
4.
Councillor Legg?
4.
Councillor McKiernan?
4.
Councillor Slater?
4.
Councillor Smedley?
4.
And Councillor Whittaker?
4.
Thank you. That motion is also carried. We'll move to the final application on this item, P2024-00453. This is plot 6. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Smedley. Thank you. We'll move to the name vote.
Councillor Afsar?
4.
Councillor Bullock?
4.
Councillor George?
4.
Councillor Holton?
4.
Councillor Jones?
4.
Councillor Legg?
4.
Councillor McKiernan?
4.
Councillor Slater?
4.
Councillor Smedley?
4.
Councillor Whittaker?
4.
Thank you. That motion is also carried. That brings this item to an end. If any members from the public gallery want to leave at this point, you may do so before we move on to the next item. Thank you, members. We'll move on to agenda item 5.6. This is the two planning applications. So P2024-01375, the Reserve Matters application, and planning application P2017-01307, which is to provide the proposed direction of 92 dwellings. I'll let the planning officer go into detail on the description and site address, etc. So over to the planning officer.
Thank you, Chair. I've just done a short introduction, a bit like the short introduction that we did at site this morning, that it's actually two applications, but it brings forward a larger scheme or in combined. So there's the 92 houses as the reserve matters on 1375, and then there's the 27 houses on a full application. So I'll be presenting both applications separately in due course, and not least because the first application can washes its own pace and could go through if members agree with it. It's not in any way combined with the other one. The other application is entirely reliant on Section 106 requirements on both sites. So I'm apparently told it's going very slow. Okay, so the bigger site which we'll be dealing with first is called is on application 2024-01375, and this is the 92 dwelling site. So we stood on Hockley Road this morning and we looked across, which was a very brownfield site. In fact, it looks very brown. You had the railway line to the south, and on the other side of the railway line you've got Old Knotty Way. Between the two areas of land where the residential are going is Pinpole Street, which runs in a southwards direction down from Balance Street. That crosses the railway as a pedestrian crossing only. People of an older age might remember it as one of the main routes out of town, but it hasn't been for quite a while. So the original permission for the 92 house site was an outline planning permission. So that put in place a series of mechanisms of conditions and Section 106 requirements that aren't replicated and don't need to be replicated at reserve matter stage, and the smaller site will wash its own pace in terms of new conditions should planning permission be granted. The slight other change or not a change, but the slight issue with the two areas of land is that the outline planning permission also provided for a parkland that goes all the way down alongside the railway. And we'll cover all those areas off as we look at the more detailed plans. But that was just really to give you an idea again at the scope of the two applications and how they fit together. So again, there's just a composite layout, again, just showing the application 1375, which we're going to do first for 92 dwellings, and then that's the site for just the 27, and then this is the parkland that's associated with the outline planning permission, and that it's too big to go all on one plan, so that continues on. So that just shows the parkland goes all the way from Hockley Road across Pinpole Street to the south of Trinity Road, and then wings its way to the back of Waitrose, to the back of a public footpath and the linkage to Bridge Street in the town centre. So going first is the Reserve Matters application, and as the Chair said, that's an application for 92 dwellings, along with the formation of that parkland, the naturalisation of the Picknell Brook, which is basically to put some bends back in the river, because it's been over time canalised, and in terms of other alterations in terms of vehicular access off Hockley Road and Pinpole Street, along with details of appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. So it's so slow it doesn't not moving at all. Here we go. Right, so I'll just briefly go through some of these slides because we kind of know the background. But just in the wider context of statutory designations, you've got the conservation area boundary to the north there, and then the green buildings are listed buildings. On a very dreary day, unlike today, there's some views as we go through the site. So that's actually where the bus was parked this morning, on Hockley Road. So that's the view towards the railway line. That's looking towards Pinpole Street. So that's across the brownfield site. And then that's just looking up the street towards the Balance Street junction. On Pimpole Street itself, that's the road that crosses between the two sites and goes down to the railway crossing. That's the view back towards Hockley Road and the railway. Again, a view towards Hockley Road. I mean, there's not a great deal to show other than it's open scrubland at the minute. More this is from Pimpole Street, and this is looking back towards Balance Street. So you've got the townscape and the rear buildings at the back there. In terms of landform, it's very much a climb towards from the brook as you go up the hill towards the houses on Balance Street. And again, just a couple of slides here. So that's taken actually from the bridge. So that's actually going to be the bridge that, once it's rebuilt, of course, would carry the path through the town park onto the back of Waitrose and to the public footpath onto Bridge Street. And again, that's just a view through the town parklands as they'll get landscape restored and all in connection with the works to the brook. So the proposed layout plan, very much a linear road formation. That was again approved at outline. So you've got a road running all the way through from Hockley Road through the site and comes out at Pimpole Street. In terms of the orientation of houses, very much on the frontage and on both sides on street frontages, and then you've got another aspect we're looking southwards over the park. In terms of the one-way system, just a detailed slide of this. So the intention is that there'll be still two-way access retained so that the people on Balance Street can still access their rear car parking areas. And then as you get down to the application site, there'll be a one-way sign there, and that will basically stop any traffic movements to the north. Just as we discussed this morning on site, there are character areas that form the basis of the design of this project. I won't go through again in too much detail than to say that the overall format was to try and continue the grain of the site and buildings up to street form, down from Balance Street in the conservation area, to recognise that the views and the surveillance needs to be over the town park area, and then you've got a more suburban landscape as you go into the town, so therefore that was to reflect that. This one's for Council Lake, just to prove that we do bother looking at the proper landscaping. So there's a very detailed layout of all the individual trees, etc. This is some cross sections of the application site. So we're looking down again, shows the clear topography of the site. This is Balance Street, and you're going down the hill on Pimpole Street down towards the brook and then the railway. Similarly, these are cross sections, and there's the elevation of the buildings as they appear on Pimpole Street. This is basically a view looking down from Balance Street at both sides of the road. So this is the Pimpole Street vista that you'll create with the two schemes together. Now these are street scenes again looking across the park. So again a distinct change in the architecture and the scale of the buildings to reflect their location. And then finally at the top you've got the street scene on Hockley Road, again reflecting that suburban nature. And that's a proposed entrance to the site of Hockley Road, so the design incorporates a pair of effectively gatehouses or lodges, and then single-storey buildings at each side to obviously provide a different level of accommodation. Just to go through all the relevant material considerations and consultations, just to say in overriding terms that there's no objections from any of the parties concerned in terms of consultees. In terms of the Town Council, there's concerns raised about highway safety, parking, potential flooding, and the open space not being adopted by the LPA. Councillor Penny Krupski called the application to committee on the basis that of the concerns of the Town Council, although it would be a committee in any event, and then there are objections as set out by the in the committee report by local residents. Also, in terms of the Toxic Nature Forum, they welcome the proposals in general terms, subject to provisos, which is obviously the devil in the detail. So in terms of the assessment, and to try and summarise quickly the 40-odd pages that you've got in front of you, in terms of the principle of development, it has an outline approval in principle, and it's a respected site for sustainable development. Obviously brings forward a housing mix which complies with our housing choice SPD. There's been a viability assessment on this larger site. That was a question that was asked this morning. That has been gone into some detail and has come to the conclusion that in terms of the costs of developing the site balanced against all the other costs that have to come forward, including Section 106 agreement requirements for education and schools, etc., that it's unviable to present forward affordable housing on the larger site. In terms of heritage impacts, officers believe that it's a scheme that enhances the area and adds to the character of the conservation area, an important gateway into Uttoxeter. In terms of residential amenity, it's considered there's no adverse impact, subject to all the requisite conditions that are set out on the officer report, that there's no likely to be significant noise and disturbance. In terms of highway safety, the County Council have raised no objections to the scheme, and this proposal will bring forward a number of vehicle and pedestrian access points that are safe for use. Flood risk, that's been fully dealt with in conjunction with the Environment Agency and local lead flood authority during the application. Biodiversity, similarly, you've got the benefit of the renaturalisation of the Picknell Brook, a creation of the town park, and biodiversity requirements are met on site. In terms of the Staffordshire Wildlife Trust, they've got no objections in principle, but wanted to rewrite their more detailed conditions in terms of the plans to observe the works as they're going forward. So that's on the update sheet. Open space massively exceeds the minimum requirements in terms of the provision on site. And in terms of rail safety, the Network Rail raised no objections in terms of the proposal in terms of rail safety, but have yet to comment on the one-way system, which again will be picked up in the update sheet. Here we go. So I won't need to, I'll try and not read out everything again because it's obviously it's all set out in the report. But basically there's the extant 106 agreement in place on the outline approval, and that puts in place traffic calming measures, a toucan crossing, yellow box, and pedestrianisation of the southern section of Pinpole Street, along with commuted sums for the travel plan, education, health and waste. In terms of the housing strategy, as we've commented on earlier, there's no affordable housing units having regard to the viability assessment. In terms of the proposal, there's a need for a deed of variation to that Section 106 agreement to bring forward the additional highway requirements. So that includes the stopping up order in terms of the one-way traffic and the TRO, provision of ensuring that private roads within the site are available for access at all times to the public, the realignment works on Pinpole Street, and the widening of footways on Pinpole Street. So, at this point in time, just to bring everything together, obviously the officer recommendation on the officer report was one of approval. There's been some tying of things together in the lead up to committee, so those tie-ups appear on the update sheet. So there's issues being raised by neighbours and interested parties which officers consider actually replicate issues that are already dealt with in the officer report, but again they are covered in the update sheet. There's also been some rewording of conditions to give some leeway to the developers in terms of where they seek their licensing from Great Crested Newts, and some additions to some of the conditions in terms of requirements such as solar panels and air source heat pumps. Also put additional controls in terms of certain dwellings in terms of the location of first floor window units, obscure glazing and opening methods. So, bringing that to a wrap, the application as far as office is concerned, is it complies with the aims of the outline approval and sustainable development requirements of policies, and that approval is subject to conditions and the deed of variation as set out in the office report, with it also being subject to the revised and additional conditions in the detailed update sheet, which I've just referenced, and there's a typo in condition 13, so I've referenced that. That's just a 2 to a 1, and that any technical matters raised by Network Rail to the Pinpole Street one-way system are to be delegated to officers to resolve in conjunction with the town, so in conjunction with the County Highway Authority, as they are technical highway matters, and that the addition of the conditions required by Staffordshire Wildlife Trust is also delegated to officers to put on the report. In terms of engagement, we've obviously engaged with the applicants throughout the process and have secured a number of amendments. So the scheme is commended to officers, commended to members indeed by officers.
Thank you. We have one speaker on this item. If I can ask Neil Cox to come forward, please. 3 minutes from when you press the mic.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. The application site represents a brownfield site on the edge of Uttoxeter town centre that's been vacant for over 17 years. It forms part of the housing allocation for 257 homes identified in the adopted local plan. The application has been prepared in accordance with the outline planning consent, which was approved in May 2024, which agreed the principle of a residential scheme for up to 108 homes and access arrangements. Details in respect of technical matters such as ecology, flood risk and drainage, construction arrangements and remediation are secured by condition on the outline consent, and these matters are in the process of being discharged separately. This application before members therefore focuses on matters of layout, appearance, scale and landscaping. This detailed proposal prepared by Cameron Homes in partnership with JCB provides 92 meticulously designed and bespoke sustainable homes. The design of the proposed homes provide a positive architectural response to the conservation area and preserves the setting of both Balance Street and Pinfold Street. A formal town park is provided along a renaturalised Picknell Brook, offering opportunities for biodiversity net gain and the provision of a new multifunctional recreational link between Bridge Street and Bramshaw Park. 97% of respondents to the pre-app consultation supported this proposal, with strong support for the design, open space provision and renaturalisation of Picknell Brook. I have never dealt with a proposal with such a high level of public support. There is a clear recognition in the community of the need for this site to be redeveloped as soon as possible and provide a positive contribution to the town. As a result of collaborative process with the community and key stakeholders, the proposed development now comes before committee with no objections from technical consultees. The proposal will deliver much needed market homes to boost the council's 5-year housing land supply position. Development of this long-standing vacant site will also provide a significant economic boost to Uttoxeter town centre and support the wider planned regeneration projects. There are no objections from technical consultees, and the scheme accords with the adopted development plan. As a high-quality, policy-compliant scheme, an exemplar scheme for Staffordshire-based Cameron Homes, it is hoped that members of the Planning Committee will agree with the Office's recommendation contained within the very thorough committee report and resolve to grant planning permission, subject to the identified conditions and the deed of variation to the Section 106 agreement. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I have no further speakers on this item, so I will open the floor up for debate. Councillor Whittaker.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to see this come forward in its present form. I know Lord Bamford's thing, he always wanted to have a legacy to the town, and we've had a few stabs at it. I mean, I think there was one that looked like the centre of Beirut, so I'm pleased that this is taking shape how it has. There's obviously been a lot of work, discussions with the officers and everybody else, so I'm fully in favour of this. And can you please look at the Maltings next?
Thank you. Do I have any further speakers on this item? Councillor Legg.
Thank you. Boundary brick wall that's going to be removed, Balance Street. It's important that the listed building has a defined boundary. What will that be, please?
I think, as I said this morning, there are about 13 or 14 plans, so I can't instantly give you the answer to that question. Maybe Neil could give the answer to that question, don't you? If you know off the top of your head, Neil. Otherwise, we can search through the documents and try and find it.
Yeah, thank you. If I can ask for Neil to come forward, if you can give us an answer on that.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the proposal is to widen the footway on Pinfold Street, so it would be to take down the element of the wall that is along Pinfold Street and rebuild it around a metre to the east to allow for that 2 metre footway. So it's effectively moving the existing wall back by a metre.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do I have any further speakers on this item? Councillor Legg.
Who will be responsible for the maintenance of the park, please? The council or the developer?
Chair, and Councillor Legg, the Section 106 agreement puts in place a management company is responsible for the management of the park.
Thank you.
That, I was going to say, that was the requirement. That was the request of the Open Spaces officer in house.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. The planning obligations for the Section 106 in the report say that the affordable housing to be determined at reserve matter stage, i.e. today, I guess. And I know you explained that on site this morning that the site was not, there was no viability, there was nothing spare left over for affordable housing. Did we not used to actually apportion all the sort of Section 106 across all the requirements rather than just cutting out affordable housing always?
Most of the monies have been taken up by this in terms of the remediation works to the actual application site. So that's how that's come forward in that way.
Other question, not as a matter of course, no. And I would have said if that was the wish of committee, that would have been clear when the outline was considered, and it would have been built in, you know, that proportioning. What was built in to the 106 was to revisit viability purely for affordable housing at this stage. So that has been done.
Built in at the outline.
It could have been, yeah.
Stage, but yeah, obviously I understand that. I understand that it's not viable, but thank you very much. And we don't really have too many questions for the Staffordshire County Council Highways officers here because they're sort of approving it. But it's always really good to see you guys here and for you to be prepared to answer questions that are usually not very friendly, I'm afraid. But there's no bad will really. We just struggle sometimes.
Thank you. Do I see any other committee member wishing to come in? No. So moving on for this application. So it's application P2024013755, which is the Reserve Matters application. Moving forward to the officer's recommendation for approval subject to conditions and conditions in the update sheet. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Legg. Right, we'll move to the named vote. Thank you.
Yep. Councillor Afsar?
4.
Councillor Bullock?
4.
Councillor George?
4.
Councillor Holton?
4.
Councillor Jones? 4. Councillor Legg?
4.
Councillor McKiernan?
For.
Councillor Slater.
For.
Councillor Smedley.
For.
And Councillor Whittaker.
For.
Thank you.
Thank you. That motion's unanimously carried. Now moving on to agenda item 5.7, which is the planning application P202401-376, which is for the erection of 27 dwellings with new vehicular access. I'll pass over to the planning officer to present the case along with the site address.
Chair, I mean, there's a lot of ride onto the other applications, so if members are happy enough for me to do quite, obviously go for it quite quickly, I'll do so. So this is the smaller site for the 27 dwellings. This actually has the actual taking down of the walls on this application. That's why you threw me. But it's the same answer. So obviously we're dealing with this smaller site now, so that's bounded by the rear of the Burnham House, the church, the Grade 2 listed church, and a spatial muse. Just a few photographs. So that's the view from the Balance Street looking towards the application site. And again, some more pictures around the back of looking on the other way round. And then some just more pictures of obviously the open space. That's the view towards Trinity Road and the Aldi in the background. And then just going down, that's the bottom end of Pimpole Street, which will be pedestrianised, and the pedestrian link across the railway crossing. Just a view through Spatial Muse. So the application sites there and residential properties will be on those hedgerows. Again, just the overall context, members are now familiar with the conservation areas and listed buildings are in context of the application site. Site layout plan, again, matching across the road from the proposals on the other application site in terms of buildings tighter up to the boundary, and then a looser form of development as you go through. There is a pedestrian access at the bottom end of into Trinity Road. Again, that's the one-way system which members are familiar with. Character areas, again, very similar, that hard up to the road on the Pimpole Street, and then you've got the view towards the park where you've got different kinds of houses. Landscaping scheme. Streetscapes, so this is the streetscape on the Pimpole Street site. So you've got a couple of larger properties providing a gateway through there. So there has obviously been a bit of a theme here with buildings forming gateways and visual stops. Just a couple of quick pictures. That's the view down towards the application site from Balance Street. Purposefully, there's been a reflection of the fact that there was the industrial site, there was a very low single-storey building there. That's replicated that detail so that it doesn't overwhelm the setting of the listed building that's on the frontage. And then again, the views down towards on both sides of the road on Pimpole Street. As per before, no objections from any statutory undertakers. The Town Council again raising the similar concerns about highway safety, flooding and open space provision. Councillor Penny Krupski asking for the application to come to committee. In terms of local residents, they're different local residents, so it's fair to say that their objections were in overall road safety, scale and design, impact on residential amenities, pressure on existing parking facilities in the locality, potential impacts of flooding, and again the Nature Forum commented on the proposals and welcomed them in general. Just to slow the job up, the buttons are going slower. Right. Again, in principle, it's in line with local plan policy, sustainable development, a clear enhancement of the townscape, linkages with the open space. It's considered again that we've worked with the applicants to make sure that there's no overlooking, no overshadowing or overbearing impacts on neighbours. Noise and dust conditions, again, commensurate and amenity spaces provided. In terms of highway safety, no objections. same applies in terms of flood risk and drainage. Biodiversity, slight change on this, the same level of provision. It's a full application, so all the details are up front. And the BNG, which has to be relates to this application because this postdates the BNG legislation, will be met off-site in a commensurate payment and pro rata, and that will be secured under the Section 106 agreement. Again, open space provision exceeds our standards, and in terms of rail safety network, rail had no issue in terms of the wider site, and again the consultation to be done in conjunction with them and the county council on the one-way system, which will require a TRO as in any event. Section 106 on this case, again, is actually different, so it will tie together with the other Section 106 requirements, but it will also require the one-way system, a need to ensure that the private roads are open to the public at all time, the realignment works, and the widening of footways. In terms of the other parts of this Section 106 agreement, you've got the BNG, but you've also got the pro rata education for primary and middle schools, again the health contribution, the waste contribution, and the viability study in relation to this application resulted in the provision of 7 number affordable housing units on the site, being discount market dwellings, 6 times 1 bed and 1 times 2 bed. As we discussed at the site this morning, the cluster rule is up to 8 on the site, so the fact that they're clustered together meets that SPD. Again, coming and wrapping it all up in one go, the proposal meets the aims of the sustainability development requires of the local plans, and so the approval is recommended subject to conditions, the Section 106 agreement as we've just gone through, and subject to revised additional conditions in the update sheet and condition 33, which again is a typo, detailed in and the technical matters raised by Network Rail to the Pinball Street one-way system to be delegated to officers to resolve with our county highway colleagues, and that the addition of the comments and conditions from the Wildlife Trust is delegated to officers. Again, as we've said, we have worked quite hard with the developers to come to the scheme that you've got in front of committee.
Thank you. Again, I have one speaker on this. If I could ask Neil Cox to come forward, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it very short. The application site represents a continuation of the long-standing vacant brownfield site that lies beyond the current outline consent to the west of Pinfold Street and to the south along the Picknell Brook. The site has remained vacant since 2008. It again forms part of the housing allocation for 257 homes in the local plan. Cameron Homes, working in partnership with JCB, has taken a very comprehensive approach in the formulation of the proposed Bamford Place scheme, spanning both sides of Pinfold Street. And once again, the design of the homes to the east of Pinfold Street provides a positive architectural response to the conservation area and preserves the setting of both Balance Street and Pinfold Street. And a number of changes have been made to the scheme, so the removal of the pocket park on the corner of Balance Street and Pinfold Street, and replacement with that bespoke workshop type dwelling. This full application proposes 27 high-quality, bespoke and sustainable homes, including 7 affordable homes, with the principal vehicular access achieved through the proposed development to the west via Hockley Road. A change to the priority on Pinfold Street is proposed to restrict vehicular movements travelling north along Pinfold Street, preventing egress onto Balance Street. There are no objections from technical consultees, and the scheme accords with policies in the local plan. It's a high-quality, policy-compliant scheme. It's hoped the members of Planning Committee will agree with the officer's recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've got no further speakers, so I'll open up the floor for debate. Do I see any member wishing to come in? Councillor Jones. Thank you. Do I see any other member of the committee wishing to come in on the item? Thank you. I don't have any further committee members wishing to come in on the debate. So moving this application forward on the officer's recommendation. So this is planning application P202401-376 for the erection of 27 dwellings, and the officer's recommendation is to approve subject to conditions in the application pack as well as conditions within the update sheet. Do I see a seconder for the application? Thank you. We'll just double check. Obviously, you're not on my sheet, hence why. If you could, please. Yep, that'll be handy. Yeah, thank you. Obviously, the officers just confirmed that you have, or there is correspondence, but I don't know, it's not on my sheet for you to speak. But however, I'd allow you 3 minutes. Yeah.
Can I first of all say that we welcome the development of the Bamford work site. As the previous speaker mentioned, it's been a long time coming, I think 17 years, and it is, there are many very strong features of that development. We have two concerns. One relates to pedestrian safety and the other to vehicle access and movement around the two sites, looking at them together. We'd reinforce, I think, your concerns with pedestrian access along Pinfold Street. It is very narrow. It is a major route into the town for the people who live on the other side of the railway line on Balance Hill. And the is quite narrow. The pavements are, certainly at the Balance Street end of Pinfold Street, are barely a metre wide. And it's a route for children into schools, and people into the town centre. So we appreciate the actions can be taken to make it one way, but we'd like it to be monitored and perhaps have some speed restrictions on the road itself. Turning to the other issue, which is about vehicle movement. At the moment, the main point of entry and access to the development, that is on both sides of Pinfold Street, is from Hockley Road. And as you probably saw this morning, the Hockley Road site is very close to the level crossing. At times when the crossing is down, traffic builds up. Hockley Road is a busy road as it is. So you've got a lot of traffic coming out onto Hockley Road, perhaps at a time when there is the level crossing barrier is down. If you remember the map, then if you have the map in front of you, but on the smaller side, the right-hand side of Pinfold Street, the smaller side, there is potential for an exit from the development onto Trinity Road. And that would give an extra point of entry and access onto the main sort of bypass Old Knotty Way, which takes cars out to the Stafford Road and also to the A50 if they're going to Stoke and Derby. And it seems remiss not to use that potential point of access onto the site. It would spread the movement of traffic. It wouldn't all be bunched onto Hockley Road, and I think would greatly improve access around the site and also safety on the site. So in terms of pedestrian access and pedestrian safety, we would certainly encourage a speed restriction on Pinfold Street, and we would certainly encourage you to have a look at the design on the smaller side of the development to see or to ask the question, why is there not a point of entry out onto Trinity Road which would take traffic out onto the Old Knotty Way? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just allow the planning officer to just come in and comment.
Chair, I mean, obviously, there's a question, obviously, maybe in members' minds about timing. Obviously, we've already determined the first application that was for the larger site. So if I could put that first thing to bed, the outline approval had the access arrangements agreed. So therefore, that couldn't have been considered as part, any access off Trinity Road couldn't have been considered as part of that application in any event, because that was already agreed at the outline stage that the access way would be between Pimpole Street and between Hockley Road. So we are back to the application that's in front of us for the 27. So obviously the original application from Hockley Road also provided for up to 108 dwellings. So the combined development site now with the two sites is 119. So that would be 11 more dwellings than was always envisaged to come through onto the Hockley Road junction. So I just wanted to set out those parameters just from the planning perspective of what happened and what was already approved in terms of the outline. I would have to defer to obviously the highway officers in terms of the technical issues of any access off that Trinity Road, and whether obviously the site as it is at the moment, they had no objections to the proposals.
Hi, as my planning colleague has just said, if we determine it on the additional 11 dwellings, that wouldn't constitute another vehicular access through Trinity Road. And obviously it's not before us today, so it's not something that we've been able to consider in terms of technically whether that would work. They are looking to put in a pedestrian access through there. And as you've also seen in the report and the information that you've had, they are proposing to a betterment for pedestrian access through Pinfold Street from Balance Street, so that widening out of the footway, also the pedestrianisation of the southern part that will link through then to the town centre as well. So the design speeds down there will be about around 20 miles an hour anyway, and the one-way system that you've got there, just where you make the new junction east to west with the new spine road, there will be a throttle there, so cars wouldn't, you're talking a very short distance between the junction of Balance Street where the throttle will be, so they wouldn't be able to really gain a lot of speed between that short distance until they meet a gateway. So in terms of safety and in terms of access into the site, we're satisfied that they have got acceptable means of access through there.
Thank you. Just opening the floor back up for debate. Obviously there was a gentleman left off the speakers list. Do I see anybody wishing to come in and ask a question before we move forward? Councillor Whittaker.
Yeah, I think the speaker got a few valid points, but it's reached at a stage where we're not in a position to take that into account, and I think it's moved on from then. But I think we've got to acknowledge the thought behind it.
Thank you. So moving back to planning application P024 01376 for the erection of 27 dwellings, subject to officer's recommendation for approval and subject to conditions that have been outlined. Do I see a seconder for the application? Councillor Legg. I've got to propose a seconder, and then we'll move to the vote, named vote.
Councillor Afsar?
4.
Councillor Bullock?
4.
Councillor George?
4.
Councillor Holton?
4.
Councillor Jones?
4.
Councillor Legg?
4.
Councillor McKiernan?
4.
Councillor Slater?
4.
Councillor Smedley?
4.
And Councillor Whittaker?
4.
Thank you.
Thank you. That motion is unanimously carried. We'll now move into the final part of the agenda. So if I can request members of the public, if they wish to leave, you may do so now. Before we move into the private part of the meeting, that in accordance with section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the remainder of the meeting, as it is likely, in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, that there will be disclosed exempt information as defined in paragraphs of Part 1, Schedule 12A of the Act, indicated in brackets before each item number on the agenda. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Legg. All those in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous.